Hey guys, Richard Holdner here. There are different kinds of performance guys. There's the easy button guy, the guy that just wants a crate motor and be done with it. There's also the do-it-yourself guy. There is the carbureted guy. There is the fuel-injected guy. Guess what? In this video, there's something for everyone. In this video, we're going to show you how to improve the performance of your 6-liter LS. It doesn't matter whether it's a carbureted 6-liter, a fuel-injected 6-liter, or a supercharged 6-liter. We're also going to talk about how the results of this test carry over to any 6-liter. So let's get going. To illustrate how to properly modify your 6-liter, obviously we need a 6-liter test motor. And in this case, we got ours from the guys at Blueprint Engines for this test. Now we got a long block, a 6-liter long block that included forged pistons. It was a 6-liter iron block, so kind of like an LQ4 and LQ9 based deal. It was equipped with a set of LS3 style heads, the rec port heads. So it had a 2165 1.6 valve package. It had a 259 cc intake port, 102 cc exhaust ports, and this motor was configured with a 24X. The interesting thing is that a lot of guys are going to dismiss this because we used a crate motor, but really there are two kinds of guys that are interested in this. One is that guy wants to just push the easy button. He wants to get a crate motor. It's all done. It's all scienced out. It's ready to go. He can just put it in. That works really well. And this is kind of what this is, although we did pick a long block and had to assemble the rest of the stuff. You can also get it in a complete motor form. The other guy needs to look at this information and go, hey, look, all of this stuff applies to my do-it-yourself. I go to the wrecking yard and get a 6-liter, because all of this stuff transfers exactly to that kind of combination as well. So if you get a 6-liter and get a set of rec port heads, an LY6 or an LS3 set of heads, and that works really well on any 6-liter. You obviously can also do this with cathedral port heads, but of all of the factory heads, the rec port LS3 or LY6 heads are going to make the most power. So that's what we started with. But we configured this Blueprint engine motor with a carbureted induction system that included a dual plane HOLLEY carburetor and a 950 XP carburetor, a 950 HOLLEY. Now we chose the larger HOLLEY because we were going to be upping the power output on this combination. We also used an MSD ignition controller, obviously, to convert our LS over to carbureted form. We ran this thing with a set of 1 7/8 long tube headers. We put a HOLLEY pan on it and some fancy valve covers, although again, the wrecking yard stuff works just fine. We did use wrecking yard coil packs and stuff on this thing, and all of that stuff worked out. But what we wanted to show was there are lots of carbureted guys out there, so we want to show what happens when you take a 6-liter, a cam to 6-liter with rec port heads, put a carbureted induction system on it, and then that will run really well in an old Chevelle or truck or anything like that. So there are lots of those guys out there. And then what we'll do in the next step is we'll step things up to EFI and then add boost. But in this combination, we ran this thing carbureted with the camshaft that Blueprint supplied with this motor. It was a little on the small side. It was actually 223. It was a single pattern cam, 223 degrees of duration. It was a 556 lift and 114 degree lobe separation angle. We had stock rockers and push rods and all of that stuff on here, but it did have the heads did have a valve spring upgrade because we were going to be putting the larger comp cam in this thing to illustrate what happens when we cam this thing up and make a little bit more power. But run with the dual plane and the carburetor on this 6-liter. This 6-liter, by the way, also was 9.5 to 1 compression. So it produced 494 horsepower and 457 foot-pounds of torque. But here's what happened after we stepped up in cam time, because I knew that, first of all, that the single pattern cam probably was not a great choice, even with the carbureted induction system. I knew that there were better cams for this, so we wanted to put a more camshaft in this thing, especially knowing later that we were going to be stepping up to a centrifugal blower. So here's what happened when we installed our camshaft. Now this cam was we also chose this cam for its streetability on a 6-liter. We wanted this thing to go in a vehicle and be driving around. So I chose not a huge cam, but it was a 227 243, and it was 614 624 lift split and 113 degree lobe separation angle. It was a comp cams grind, so it's pretty popular and pretty common. It works really well. Those are good duration figures for a daily driver kind of 6-liter. It offered, obviously you can see, compared to the single pattern cam, it basically offered more power everywhere they came in and made the same power right here at about 4,700 RPM, but otherwise the dual pattern cam made more power down below 3,500, which is low as we loaded it, and certainly made a lot more power out at the top. It produced 522 horsepower, and peak torque was 463 foot-pounds of torque. So this combination worked good, and you can see if you look at where the torque peak was, which is down near 4,100 RPM, that's a function of the dual plane intake manifold, which is really good at producing torque. In fact, down in that range, it's better than the LS3 EFI manifold, which we'll kind of see. But this combination worked good. The camshaft upgrade worked exactly as we expected it to. So now let's take a look and see what happens when we convert it over to EFI on this 6-liter and then add a boost. After running the carburetor and the cam upgrade, we decided to switch over to fuel injection. Now this test happened a month or two after we had run the carburetor, so it wasn't a direct back-to-back test. It happened later on, but we wanted to switch over to EFI because we were going to be running a PROCHARGER and blowing through the factory LS3 intake manifold. So we installed the factory LS3 intake manifold. Otherwise, it was the same motor, same camshaft, same cylinder heads, all of that stuff, same header design, exact same headers. And what happened is interesting. Run with the LS3 intake manifold, this thing produced 515 horsepower and 478 foot-pounds of torque. And for those of the guys that are interested in the comparison, although I don't, I'm a little bit hesitant showing you this. This is the red is the dual plane intake manifold with the 950 HOLLEY. And it's an interesting comparison in that we expect, and haven't run this kind of comparison before when I did the big LS3 intake test, although we did it on a 415-inch stroker, we expect the dual plane to make more power below 4,000, 41, 4,200 than the factory LS3 manifold. Despite the fact that it's a long runner, the dual plane does very well down there. Now it makes less torque in the middle than the LS3 manifold, which we fully expect and has happened every time we've run this kind of comparison. So we have, we're looking at 20 to 22 foot-pounds extra torque there in the middle. But the interesting thing, and the thing that I don't really understand, is that the dual plane made more power than the LS3 intake manifold, which I've never seen happen before. When we did the test on the big stroker motor, on the 415, the LS3 manifold still made more power at the top. The only thing I can point to, as I said, this wasn't a direct back-to-back test on the same day run the way that we normally do. And also I look back at the notes on the LS3 intake, and it's only showing 25 or 26 degrees of total timing. Now I don't know if we didn't change the notes and this is full timing, because it should be 29 or 30 degrees certainly out at the power peak, or if we didn't put the timing in it. And after running hundreds and hundreds of these motors, I can't remember back a few years on one specific thing. Normally we're really good at updating the notes and obviously tuning this thing to where until it stops making power. So I don't have that answer. All I can tell you is this is what happened, and I thought it would be an interesting comparison comparing the carburetor. I don't take that as a direct back-to-back comparison because I like to do it on the same engine on the same day, and that way everything is optimized and we know that we've done everything that we can to try to compare these two and make the most power out of them. But this is what happened, and so that's what I'm reporting. But that's not really the important part. So our EFI combination produced 515 horsepower and 478 foot-pounds of torque. But here's what happened. The goal for this combination was this motor was going in a vehicle, and as I said, it was owned by one of the magazine editors, and they wanted to put it in a car, and they were looking for about 800 horsepower. So we installed a PROCHARGER on this thing and put a 4.25 blower pulley on it. The PROCHARGER was an F1A94, a D1SC, okay, with a 4.25 blower pulley and a 7.5-inch-ish crank pulley. We had real conservative timing in it, 18 degrees. We put a mixture of 100 octane gas in this thing. It did have an air-to-water intercooler, the same core that we use on almost all of these forced induction tests. We were running dyno water through that, which was about 70 degrees. And we stopped the run at 6,300 or so, where this thing made well over 800 horsepower. We were at near 820 and made 702 foot-pounds of torque, and the peak boost was registered at the peak RPM in typical kind of centrifugal blower fashion. So it started out down here at 3,100. We started at 2.9 pounds and it rose to a peak out here at the horsepower peak of 11.5 pounds. You can see it was still climbing. The blower had plenty left. We've done 1,000 horsepower with the D1SE, so we know it could keep going. But as I said, all they were looking for was 800, so we showed them, hey, look, you can do that at nearly 6,000 RPM without any problem. Or you could put an even bigger blower pulley on there if you wanted to rev the thing out, and you'd still make over 800. You would just do it at, a little bit higher RPM. So all of that stuff works out really well. The 6 liter worked well, and as I said in the previous thing when we were taking a look at the carbureted stuff, this is all stuff that can be done with any 6 liter. So if you go get a 6 liter from the wrecking yard, even with 317 heads on it, put a cam, put springs in it, put boost, you can run a PROCHARGER like we did here. You can run a turbo, obviously, a positive displacement blower, whatever you want to put on there. You can, that makes a good carbureted combination. If you're a carbureted guy, put a dual plane carburetor and the MSD on there and put a decent cam in. The 6 liter does really well. If you want to add boost to it, if you want to step up in power, you can put the rec port heads on, the factory rec port heads, or there's like a bajillion different aftermarket heads that you can upgrade it even further. But all of the stock stuff works great with a cam, with boost. Awesome stuff. Let's get to our conclusion. Okay guys, what do we learn from this video on improving the performance of your 6 liter LS? First of all, first and foremost, very obviously, it's very easy to make power with a 6 liter LS. All you have to do is put the right cylinder heads on it, any kind of camshaft, even a carbureted combination. You can make way over 500 horsepower. And a 500 horsepower carbureted 6 liter would be a great motor in any kind of like Chevelle or Camaro or truck or any kind of a street motor. Then if you want to go fuel injected and supercharged, really the sky is the limit to how much power you can make. With a supercharged LS, there's no limit to how much power you can make. In fact, making power with an LS is never the problem. Deciding when to stop making power, now that's another thing. I'm Richard Holder, guys. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff, and I will keep testing.